Okay, so in terms of how to measure the domains. Okay, so like Glasgow Outcome Scale, it follows again an integrated impairment and disability model. So again, you're looking at functional shortfalls must be explained by the impairments and the diagnoses. So once again, we need to tease out the contribution in this case. Okay, so in this case, we have somebody who has a traumatic, that's not a good example. So okay, so in this case, we have somebody who has a knee impairment and psychological impairment, and some of their ADLs are clearly related to their knee impairment, and other ADL impacts would be related to their psychological diagnosis. So can we include the impacts from the orthopedic knee injury for purpose of the chapter 14, the mental behavioral chapter? No? Okay. So no one's going to make the argument there's some kind of link between a major depression and the impact on the knee? Not too likely. Conversion disorder of the knee, not really heard of. So we're probably safe in thinking, and again, the emphasis is on really putting a box around those limitations, teasing out the parts that we aren't to be included in the rating, and so really narrowing in on those aspects that relate to our diagnoses that are MVA related. Okay, so let's say we have somebody who premorbidly had a bipolar disorder. Sorry to pick on Paul all the time. There are other psychologists that pick on them too, but I think it really is more of a diagnostic kind of question, so that's why I'm picking on Paul. So Paul, somebody has a bipolar disorder, and let's say that their mania, hypomania, after the accident has followed pretty well the normal, a traditional course for that individual. The pattern hasn't really changed. But the depressive aspect really has changed. There's clearly been a worsening of their depression. So which components would be fair game for the mental behavioral rating, and which parts wouldn't?
The depression would be fair game.
Yeah.
It's a change from the pre-accident status.
Right. Mm-hmm. And the mania?
I'd probably leave it alone.
Yeah, you'd pretty well have to ask the question, unless you could demonstrate that even in although they tend to be opposite, you really don't have somebody who is both has major depression and the hypomania symptoms at the same time. It is cyclical. So if you exclude that component, you're really not looking at that component. You're looking at the times when the depression is actually active, and now it's actually worse than it was pre-accident, and that's the part that we're trying to identify the functional impact of. The cognitive measurement, important elements of concentration, persistence, and pace, as well as social and adaptation domains. OT measurement is critical, and categorize the independent activities across domain and the severity levels. Okay. So examples, you guys all know what activities of daily living look like. There's an example of them. I've been accused of leaving off work, but it is important to consider work. The guides do make reference to work being a component of ADL. Social functioning, so the guides actually specify that we are to consider the ability of the person to interact with neighbors, to interact with grocery clerks, to do their banking, landlord supervisors. These people are actually named in that segment, social functioning, as examples of things we're to consider.